Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Nature Channel. Tonight, we are going to sit together beneath the oldest living things on Earth. Some of the trees we will visit have been standing since before the pyramids were built. Rooted, breathing, growing slowly in the same quiet patch of ground for thousands and thousands of years. There is one tree in Sweden that has been alive for nearly 10,000 years. 10,000 years. And still it stands, perfectly still, holding the sky above it like it has always done. Let that thought settle gently over you. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything at all. Just let yourself breathe slowly and let the ancient forest come to you. Feel the soft ground beneath you. Let the weight of the day fall away, the way leaves fall in autumn. Unhurried, drifting, easy. Take one slow breath in and let it go. We are going to spend this evening among the oldest, most peaceful living beings on the planet. And by the time we are done, you will feel as still and as settled as one of them. There is something different about a very old tree. You can feel it before you even see it. A kind of heaviness in the air, a softness underfoot, a quiet that goes deeper than ordinary quiet. When you walk toward an ancient tree, the world around it seems to slow. The birds call a little more gently. The wind moves through the branches like a whisper rather than a sound. Even the light feels different, filtered, golden, patient. The oldest trees on Earth are not always the tallest or the widest. Some of them are quite modest looking from the outside. A gnarled juniper on a windswept cliff. A small, leaning pine in the snowy mountains of California. A grove of quaking aspens in Utah that looks, on the surface, like an ordinary stand of trees. But beneath the ground, those aspens share a single root system that has been alive for more than 80,000 years. The trees above are new. They come and go with the seasons. But the root, the enormous underground self of this forest, has been breathing quietly since before modern humans arrived on this continent. Imagine that. A living thing older than human history. Older than the wheel, older than writing. And still it sends up new shoots each spring, gentle and green, as if time were nothing at all. The tree most people call the world's oldest individual tree is a bristlecone pine named Methuselah, tucked somewhere in the White Mountains of California. Its exact location is kept secret, a kindness to protect it from too many visitors. But it has been growing in that same high, cold, rocky place for more than 5,000 years. It was already ancient when the first cities were being built in Mesopotamia. It was alive when the first written alphabet was invented. And tonight, while you breathe and rest, it is still alive, still leaning slightly into the mountain wind, still adding one thin ring to its heartwood, as it has done every single year for 5 millennia. A bristlecone pine grows incredibly slowly. In its harsh, dry, rocky habitat where winters are fierce and soil is thin, it may add only a millimeter of new wood in an entire year. This slow growth is, strangely, the secret of its endurance. Dense, resinous wood resists insects and decay. The very difficulty of its life makes it nearly indestructible. So, the tree that struggles most grows longest. There is something quietly beautiful in that. You might like to think of yourself like that tonight, growing slowly, quietly, taking in just what you need, nothing more. Let the rest of the world rush. You are in no hurry. The bristlecone pines of the White Mountains grow at elevations above 3,000 meters, where the air is thin and the nights are cold even in summer. Up there, the trees twist into extraordinary shapes, spiraling, curling, their bark stripped by wind into pale polished silver on one side, while the other side runs with deep amber resin and rough, living wood. They look almost like sculpture, like something carved by a patient artist over many centuries. And they were, in a way. The artist was time itself, and the wind, and the cold. When scientists want to understand ancient climates, what the weather was like 5,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, they look at tree rings. Every ring in a tree's cross-section represents 1 year of growth. Wide rings mean good years, full of rain and warmth. Narrow rings tell of drought, of hardship, of cold springs. Reading the rings of a bristlecone pine is like reading the diary of the atmosphere itself. All those years written in wood, in silence, in circles. There is a science called dendrochronology, which simply means the study of tree rings, and it allows researchers to reach back in time with extraordinary precision. By matching the ring patterns of living trees with the rings of ancient fallen logs, scientists have built timelines that reach back more than 11,000 years. 11,000 years of weather written in wood. Trees are the oldest record keepers on Earth. In the forests of Japan, there is a tradition called Shinrin-yoku, which translates roughly as forest bathing. It does not mean swimming in a forest. It means simply being in the presence of trees, walking slowly, breathing the air, letting the green world absorb you. Studies have found that spending time among trees lowers the stress hormone cortisol, slows the heart, reduces blood pressure, and calms the nervous system. The forest, it seems, is genuinely good for you. And the older the trees, the deeper the calm. Feel that calm now, if you like. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out. Among the most extraordinary ancient trees in the world is a group of coastal redwoods in California, some of which are over 2,000 years old. Coastal redwoods are not quite as old as bristlecone pines, but they are far larger. The tallest living tree in the world is a coastal redwood named Hyperion, standing at just over 115 meters. That is almost 400 feet of living wood, swaying gently in the fog. You could stack 10-story buildings inside this tree and still have room at the top. Redwoods grow in a narrow coastal strip where summer fog rolls in from the Pacific, cooling the air and providing moisture even in the dry season. The trees have learned to drink from the fog itself, absorbing water directly through their leaves and needles when the mist surrounds them. A single large redwood can pull hundreds of liters of water from the fog in a single foggy day. The forest creates its own weather. The more trees there are, the more fog they catch, the more moisture stays in the soil, the better the trees grow. A redwood forest is one of the quietest, most hushed places on Earth. The thick bark, which can be 30 centimeters deep on an old tree, absorbs sound. The deep canopy above filters the light to a soft green gold. Ferns cover the floor in layered, overlapping fronds, and moss grows thick and soft on every fallen log, every stone, every shaded bank. Walking through an old-growth redwood forest feels like walking through a cathedral built over centuries, whose architects were simply time and rain and seed. The bark of a coastal redwood contains a natural fire retardant, tannin, which makes the trees remarkably resistant to burning. Ancient redwoods carry the fire scars of dozens of fires on their trunks, each one healed over, each one sealed away in a new layer of bark. They have survived for 2,000 years, not by avoiding fire, but by simply enduring it, growing back, growing on. Ancient trees like these are sometimes called legacy trees by foresters and ecologists. They are trees that have outlived many generations of the forest around them, and in doing so, they have become something more than individual plants. They are habitats, they are archives, they are homes. If you feel yourself getting sleepy, let it happen. There is nothing you need to do right now. The trees have been standing for thousands of years, and they will go on standing long after this moment. You can let everything else go, and if this kind of quiet evening is something you enjoy, there are more stories just like this waiting for you in our playlist. A gentle reminder to check it out. It is full of nights like this one, spent in soft, faraway places. In the high mountains of Sweden, in a place called Fulufjallet, there is a Norway spruce that grew from a seed nearly 10,000 years ago. Its name is Old Chico, and it stands at just over 5 meters tall, a modest, somewhat scraggly little tree leaning slightly, its lower branches sweeping the ground. If you saw it without knowing, you might not think it was anything special. But beneath the surface, in the cold, stony soil, its root system has been alive since the end of the last ice age. Old Chico was already ancient when the woolly mammoths disappeared from the earth. The tree has survived by a process called layering. When a branch grows heavy enough to touch the ground, it can take root and grow a new trunk. So, the visible tree above ground has renewed itself many times, like a flame being passed from candle to candle, while the root below persists unchanged. The root is the real ancient thing. It is the quiet, invisible heart of the tree, buried in frozen ground, patient beyond all imagining. There is something deeply comforting about that image. The part of the tree that is oldest is the part you cannot see, the hidden part, the still, cool, silent root in the dark earth. And from that hidden place, life comes up again and again into the light. Let yourself feel something like that now. A deep, quiet root somewhere inside you, still and safe and very old. Nothing needs to disturb it tonight. Norway spruces are the classic Christmas tree. The tall, conical, blue-green tree whose shape has been familiar to northern peoples for thousands of years. They smell of cold air and resin, of winter forests and snow-covered hillsides. Their cones hang down from the branches in long clusters, and in autumn they drop seeds that spiral slowly to the ground on papery wings, each one a tiny helicopter spinning through the still forest air. In the cold northern forests where these trees grow, the winter nights are extraordinarily long and dark. In midwinter, the sun may only rise for a few hours, barely clearing the horizon before sinking again. During these months, the forest rests. The trees slow their metabolism almost to nothing. The sap retreats into the roots. The needles deepen in their dark green color, holding what warmth they can, and the entire landscape settles into a great, blanketed silence under deep snow. If you have ever stood outside on a snowy night and noticed how quiet everything is, you have felt that. Snow absorbs sound with extraordinary efficiency. A heavy snowfall can reduce ambient noise by 10 to 15 decibels, which, to our ears, feels like the world has been wrapped in cotton wool. The snow-covered forest is one of the quietest places that exists on Earth. Even your own footsteps are absorbed. Even your breathing sounds loud. The Sami people of northern Scandinavia have lived among these ancient forests for thousands of years. They have names for every kind of snow, every quality of light on the landscape, every stage of ice on a frozen lake. Their culture grew up in deep relationship with the forest and its rhythms, and their traditional knowledge of the land includes an understanding of which old trees are safe to shelter under in a storm, which roots hold water where the mosses grow thickest and softest for sleeping. In Japan, the ancient cedar forests of Yakushima Island are home to trees more than 3,000 years old. Yakushima receives more rainfall than almost anywhere else in Japan, up to 10 meters of rain per year. And the forest is so thick and green and dripping that it seems almost alive in a way beyond ordinary living. Moss covers everything: the ground, the tree roots, the fallen logs, the stones, the lower trunks of the trees themselves. The forest floor is a deep, spongy, soft carpet of green that your feet sink into with every step. The most famous of Yakushima's ancient cedars is called Jomon Sugi, the cedar of the Jomon period, named for the prehistoric era of Japanese culture it predates. It is estimated to be between 2,200 and 7,200 years old. The uncertainty is wide because the tree is so old and so large that different methods of measurement give different results. What is certain is that it is very, very old. It stands at over 25 meters tall, its trunk nearly 17 meters in circumference. To wrap your arms around it, you would need to join hands with 16 other people. Trees this ancient develop extraordinary features that younger trees do not have. Their bark becomes deeply furrowed, almost canyon-like, running in ridges and valleys up the entire height of the trunk. These furrows are habitats in themselves, hiding places for beetles and small mammals, nesting sites for birds, channels for rainwater to run down in sheets during storms. The bark of a very old tree is its own small ecosystem. In the cavities and hollows that form in ancient trunks, owls nest, bears scratch, bees build their colonies in the warm, resinous dark. Dozens of species of fern and lichen grow only in the deep shade and moisture that an ancient forest provides. Without the old trees, all of these smaller lives would have nowhere to go. Think about that as you breathe. All of those small lives going about their business in the dark and the quiet, perfectly content, perfectly at home, inside and around the old tree. The Greek island of Crete is home to an olive tree that has been growing for more than 3,000 years and is still producing olives today. It grows near the town of Anovuv in a grove of other old trees, but this one is the oldest, its trunk nearly 4 meters wide, its bark twisted and silver gray, its branches spreading in every direction. In 3,000 years, the world around it has changed beyond recognition. Civilizations have risen and fallen, languages have come and gone, empires have appeared and disappeared. And still, this old olive tree puts out its small silver leaves and its small hard fruits, as it has always done, asking nothing, needing nothing but sun and thin rocky soil and a little rain. The olive tree has been sacred in Mediterranean cultures for thousands of years, a symbol of peace and abundance, of endurance and blessing. An olive branch is still the oldest symbol of peace that we carry with us. And when you know that those symbols come from trees that have been alive for 3 millennia, the gesture of offering one takes on a new weight, a new gentleness. You may feel yourself growing heavier now, sinking a little deeper into whatever you are lying or sitting on. That is exactly right. Let the weight of your body find the ground. You are being held. In the south of Africa, in the dry, sandy landscapes of Botswana and Zimbabwe, there grow trees called baobabs, the most surreal-looking trees on Earth, and among the oldest living things on the continent. A baobab tree looks as though it has been planted upside down, its enormous bulbous trunk swelling up from the earth like a great bottle or gourd, and its relatively sparse branches reaching upward like roots searching the sky. During the long dry season, when the baobab has dropped its leaves, this impression is even stronger. A tree of bare, branching arms raised toward the clouds, its vast body smooth and pale as clay. Baobabs can grow to extraordinary sizes. The widest living baobab has a trunk more than 15 meters in diameter. You could hollow it out and fit a small house inside, and indeed, some baobabs have been used as storage rooms, bus stops, even a small pub. Their wood is soft and spongy, more like a cork than the dense heartwood of a European oak. This soft wood is how they store water. A large baobab can hold over 100,000 liters of water in its trunk, a living cistern that sustains itself and much of the surrounding wildlife through months without rain. The age of baobabs is difficult to measure because their soft wood does not form clear annual rings. Scientists have used radiocarbon dating to estimate ages and have found individual trees more than 2,000 years old, with some specimens possibly approaching 3,000. They are the oldest trees in Africa and among the oldest on the planet. For the peoples who have lived near baobabs for generations, these trees are more than just trees. They are landmarks, meeting places, sources of food and medicine. The baobab produces large white flowers, night blooming, pollinated by bats, that hang from long stalks and smell of fermenting fruit. The flowers are followed by velvet-coated pods the size of a large coconut, containing a chalky, vitamin-rich pulp that dissolves in water to make a sharp, refreshing drink. Elephants eat the bark of young baobabs and will excavate the soft wood of older ones during the dry season to get at the stored moisture inside. In this way, the old trees are slowly hollowed out over centuries, becoming more and more cavernous with age, until they are more like a shell than a solid thing. Enormous, light-filled, open to the sky. Inside an old baobab, the light comes in through cracks and holes and filters green and golden through the living walls. Birds nest in the hollow. Small mammals shelter there from the midday heat. There is a grove of ancient baobabs in Madagascar, a country where baobabs are woven deep into the culture and the landscape. This grove is called the Avenue of the Baobabs, a long dirt road flanked on both sides by enormous ancient trees, their trunks glowing amber in the light of sunset, their sparse canopies silhouetted against a sky that turns in the evenings every shade of apricot and rose and dusty violet. In that long, golden evening light, the trees cast shadows that stretch all the way across the road, and the whole scene holds a feeling of tremendous calm, of being somewhere that has looked exactly like this for centuries and will look exactly like this for centuries more. The light changes, the shadows lengthen, and the trees stand as they always have. Close your eyes for a moment if you like, and picture that road, the warm earth underfoot, the last light, the soft sound of insects beginning their evening song, the enormous still trunks glowing golden on either side of you. You're walking very slowly, and there is no hurry, and everything is all right. In Tasmania, an island off the southern coast of Australia, there are forests of Huon pine that include trees more than 2,000 years old. The Huon pine is not a particularly tall tree. It rarely exceeds 30 meters, but it grows with a slowness and patience that borders on the geological. Its wood is extraordinarily dense and full of natural oils that make it almost completely resistant to rot and insect damage. A fallen Huon pine may lie on the forest floor for thousands of years before it fully decays. This resistance to decay has made Huon pine extraordinarily valuable for boat building and carpentry. So valuable that many ancient trees were logged in the 19th and 20th centuries. What remains is now strictly protected. Walking through a surviving ancient Huon pine forest is like stepping back into a world before human disturbance. A cool, dim, deeply green world where the undergrowth is deep and soft, and the oldest trees carry thousands of years of growth in their quiet, resinous wood. The wood of a Huon pine smells of something between cedar and pencil shavings, a clean, cool, slightly sharp scent that lingers on your hands long after you have touched the bark. It is one of those smells that feels like a memory, even when you are smelling it for the first time. On the other side of the world, in the mountains of Iran and Turkey, ancient pistachio trees grow on rocky hillsides above 2,000 meters, their trunks gnarled and gray, their canopies rounded and green, their roots driving deep into the limestone rock to find water and hold on. Some of these trees are estimated to be more than 1,000 years old, modest by the standards of bristlecone pines or baobabs, but ancient by any human measure. And they are still bearing fruit, still feeding the birds and small mammals of the mountainside, still holding the thin soil against the wind and rain. The pistachio tree is extraordinary in its tolerance for difficult conditions. It can survive long droughts. It can grow in poor, saline, alkaline soil where most other trees would fail. It can withstand temperatures below -20 degrees Celsius in winter and above 40 in summer. It is one of the most enduring trees in the world precisely because it is adapted to endure, to persist, to wait. In the summers, these old pistachio trees fill with the sound of bees. Their small, clustered fruits ripen to a pale, rosy tan and split open when they are ready. A small, satisfying crack as the shell parts and reveals the green nut inside. The trees fill the dry mountain air with a faint, sweet smell, and the light filters through their small leaves in a dancing pattern of gold and shadow. And the old tree stands in all of it, as it has stood for 1,000 years, entirely unbothered. There is a yew tree in a churchyard in the village of Fortingall, in the Highlands of Scotland, that may be more than 5,000 years old. Yew trees are difficult to age with precision because their trunks often hollow out in great age, destroying the innermost rings. But the Fortingall yew is estimated by some researchers to be among the oldest living things in Europe. It stands behind a low stone wall in a small churchyard, surrounded by granite gravestones that are themselves several hundred years old. And yet, they are infants next to the tree. The Fortingall yew has grown so large and so old that its original single trunk has long since split and spread into multiple separate stems, each one a substantial tree in its own right. In ancient times, the tree was even larger. Witnesses in the 18th century described it as having a trunk that 27 people could stand inside. Since then, it has been damaged by visitors breaking off branches for walking sticks and other souvenirs. A reminder of how fragile even the most enduring things can be in the face of thoughtlessness. Today, the yew is carefully protected and it continues to grow. In the late summer and autumn, it produces small red berries, the only part of the yew that is not poisonous, that are eaten by birds and squirrels who carry the seeds to new places. Even at 5,000 years old, the tree is still reproducing, still sending its seeds out into the world, still participating in the great slow conversation of the living forest. Yew trees have been sacred in the British Isles since before recorded history. Many of the oldest yews in Britain and Ireland grow in churchyards, but the churches were built later. The yews were there first, growing in sacred groves, marking places of gathering and ceremony long before Christianity arrived on those islands. The church builders chose those places because they were already holy, already old, already weighted with presence. They built their walls around the trees, and the trees grew on. The yew has a complicated relationship with death and renewal. Its wood was used to make longbows, the most powerful weapons of the medieval period. And yet, the tree itself is evergreen, never losing its dark, needle-like leaves, staying a deep and constant green through the hardest winters. In the language of symbols, the yew stands for both death and immortality, the end of things and their continuation, a fitting spirit for a tree that may outlast civilization itself. In the south of England, in the village of Crowhurst in Surrey, there is another ancient yew, this one thought to be over 4,000 years old. It grows in a churchyard, as many of the oldest yews do, and at some point in the 19th century, someone cut a door into its hollowed trunk and installed a bench inside. You could, if you were very small, sit inside that tree and look out through the door at the churchyard, surrounded by 4,000 years of living wood. If you imagine sitting there now, the cool, dim interior of the tree, the smell of resin and old wood, the small rectangle of soft gray English light visible through the door, the sound of wind in the branches far above. If you imagine being held very gently by 4,000 years of growth, how does that feel? Peaceful, perhaps. Safe. Like being held by something much older and steadier than anything in your ordinary life. Let that feeling stay with you. In Poland, in the Białowieża forest, one of the last remaining fragments of the ancient primeval forest that once covered all of Europe, there are oak trees that are more than 800 years old. These are not the oldest trees in the world, but in the context of a landscape that was once entirely wild and has remained partly wild for centuries, they feel ancient in a different way. Ancient because everything around them is also old, also dense, also layered with centuries of growth and decay. The Bialowieza forest is famous for its European bison, which graze in the glades between the old trees. But it is equally remarkable for its insects, its mosses, its fungi, and its birds. More than 250 species of bird have been recorded in the forest. The black stork, the white-tailed eagle, the pygmy owl, all find homes in the ancient trees, in the cavities and hollows and thick canopies that only very old trees can provide. In a forest as old and undisturbed as Bialowieza, the cycle of life and death is visible everywhere. Old trees fall and lie on the forest floor, slowly decaying over decades into a rich, soft, dark humus that feeds the next generation of trees. This lying down wood is one of the most important habitats in a forest. Hundreds of species of beetle, fungi, lichen, and small mammal live only in fallen, decaying wood, and their presence is only possible where old trees have been allowed to fall and rest and return slowly to the earth. Nothing is wasted in an old forest. Everything returns. Everything becomes something else. And as you rest now, in the warmth and quiet of wherever you are, you might let the same thought pass through you, that you too are part of something much larger than any single evening, and that resting right now is exactly the right thing to do. You might enjoy knowing that there is a whole playlist of stories like this one waiting for you whenever you want. Each one a slow walk through some soft, beautiful corner of the natural world. It is there whenever you need it. There is a tree in the Tule Valley of Mexico, a Montezuma cypress, locally called El Árbol del Tule, whose trunk is the widest of any tree on earth. Its circumference at chest height is more than 42 meters. To walk all the way around the base of this tree, you would need to take about 140 steps. The trunk is so vast, so deeply furrowed and ribbed and folded, that when you look at it up close, your mind struggles to read it as a single object. It looks like many trees merged into one, or like a landscape unto itself, a mountain range of bark, valleys, and ridges running vertically in great corrugated lines, each one home to mosses and ferns and small animals. El Árbol del Tule stands in the courtyard of a small church in the town of Santa Maria del Tule, in the state of Oaxaca. The tree has been growing there for at least 2,000 years, and possibly as many as 3,000, though estimates vary. Long before the church was built, long before the Spanish arrived in Mexico, long before the Aztec Empire rose and fell, this tree was already old. It was growing quietly in this same warm valley, in the same soft volcanic soil, near the same slow-moving stream. The Zapotec people who have lived in this region for thousands of years have always revered this tree. In their traditions, it is a sacred entity, alive not just in the biological sense, but in a deeper, older sense. A being with memory, with presence, with a kind of slow wisdom that only great age can give. When you stand beside it and look up into its canopy, so wide it shades almost half a hectare of ground, you feel something of that presence. The air beneath it is cool and still, and somehow different from the air outside its canopy. Something has changed. The Montezuma cypress, like many trees that grow near water, spreads its roots wide and shallow rather than deep. Walking around the base of El Árbol del Tule, you can see the roots rising above the ground in enormous, smooth, sinuous ridges, like the backs of great gray whales surfacing from the earth. Moss grows in the damp spaces between them. Small ferns tuck themselves into the crevices. The roots are their own world. Ancient trees near water often develop these surface roots as a way of breathing. In waterlogged or compacted soil, roots need to reach the surface to access oxygen. The roots of a cypress beside a river will reach out onto the bank and sometimes into the water itself, filtering the stream as it passes, holding the bank against erosion, slowing the current with the resistance of living wood. Across the world, in the subtropical forests of Queensland, Australia, grow ancient kauri trees, massive, column-trunked giants with smooth, gray-green bark that peels off in thin, curling sheets, revealing fresh, paler bark beneath, like something being slowly unwrapped. The oldest kauri trees in Australia are over 1,000 years old, their trunks rising perfectly straight for 20 or 30 meters before branching into a wide, flat canopy that spreads like a parasol high above the surrounding forest. The great kauri forests of New Zealand, related but distinct, were once among the most impressive forests on Earth, their trees reaching heights of 50 meters and ages of over 2,000 years. The Maori people held kauri in deep respect, using the wood for their great ocean-going canoes. A single kauri log could provide a canoe large enough for 100 people. Before a kauri was felled for this purpose, ceremonies were held, and the tree was asked, in a real sense, for its gift. The relationship was one of mutual respect, of gratitude. In the warm, misty forests of Taiwan, there are giant trees called Taiwan red cypress and hinoki cypress that have been growing for 2,000 and 3,000 years. Forests of these trees were once extensive across the island's mountain ranges, their resinous wood perfuming the cool air with a clean, sharp sweetness. Today, what remains is strictly protected, and walking among them is considered a deeply restorative experience, not just pleasant, but genuinely healing in some difficult-to-define way. The scent of cypress, whether from Taiwan, the Mediterranean, or the American Southwest, has a quality that is hard to describe, but unmistakable once experienced. It is clean and dry and slightly sharp, with something underneath that is warmer and more resinous, more amber. It is one of those smells that seems to bypass the thinking mind entirely and go directly to somewhere calmer and older. The ancient Egyptians used cypress oil in their preparations. They knew, in their own way, that it had a quality beyond the ordinary, something that preserved and calmed and held. Breathe in slowly now. Imagine that clean, dry, slightly sweet smell filling your lungs. And breathe out again, slowly. You are doing beautifully. The trees are all around you, and the night is gentle. In the mountains of Lebanon, a small grove of ancient cedar trees has survived since biblical times. The cedars of God, as this grove is known, grows on the slopes of a mountain called the Macmel, at an elevation of about 2,000 meters, where winter snowfall is deep and summers are short. The grove contains about 375 cedar trees, some of which are more than 3,000 years old. They are the last survivors of vast cedar forests that once covered the mountains of Lebanon and Syria, forests so valuable that they were logged heavily by the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, the Romans, and many others over many centuries. These ancient cedars are massive. The oldest among them have trunks 4 meters wide and spread their branches over an area 30 meters across. Their bark is deeply furrowed, dark brown and rough, layered like the pages of a very old book. Their canopies are irregular and spreading, each major branch a tree in its own right, reaching outward in every direction against the backdrop of pale limestone cliffs and deep blue mountain sky. The cedar of Lebanon features on the national flag of Lebanon, a recognition of how deeply the tree is woven into the identity and history of the land. It was used in the construction of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem, in the building of Phoenician ships that crossed the Mediterranean, in the palaces and temples of ancient Egypt. Its wood is fragrant, hard, and long-lasting, resistant to rot and insects. A cedar beam cut 3,000 years ago can still be found today in structures across the Middle East, still solid, still faintly scented. The grove at the Cedars of God is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, carefully protected and slowly recovering. New cedars have been planted around the ancient core, and the forest is very gradually expanding. It will take centuries to approach what was lost, but the ancient trees at the center of the grove are still there, still growing, their roots descending through the thin mountain soil into the limestone bedrock, still drawing water from the deep snow melt of winter. On spring evenings, when the snow is melting and the first new growth is appearing on the lower slopes, the air in the cedar grove carries a smell that is both sweet and resinous. The smell of cedar pollen and melting snow and cold limestone, and the first hints of warming earth. Birds that have been absent through the winter begin to return. The blue rock thrush perches on the highest branches and sings, and the sound of it carries across the whole valley in the clear mountain air. In the ancient world, the cedar was considered a tree of the divine. Its height, its permanence, its fragrance, its extraordinary wood all suggested something beyond the ordinary. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest written story in the world, set down more than 4,000 years ago, the great hero Gilgamesh travels to a cedar forest seeking something beyond the limits of ordinary life. The cedar forest, in that oldest of stories, is the place where the human and the sacred meet. There is something in that very old instinct, the feeling that forests, especially ancient forests, belong to a different register of time, a different quality of being than the ordinary human world. When you enter an old forest, you're entering something that was here before you and will be here after you. And that thought, which might seem daunting in another context, becomes strangely comforting in the quiet of the trees. You're small, and the forest is vast and old, and that is exactly as it should be. In the forests of Russia and Siberia, ancient Siberian larch trees grow in conditions of extraordinary harshness, permafrost, temperatures that can fall to 50 degrees below zero, summers so short that the whole growing season is compressed into a few brief months of intense light. The Siberian larch is the world's most northerly tree, growing further into the Arctic than any other species, its roots spreading wide and shallow above the frozen ground. Larch trees are unusual among conifers in being deciduous. They drop their needles in autumn and stand bare through the long northern winter, their branches outlined against the white sky. In autumn, just before the needles fall, they turn a pure, warm gold, a color so clean and bright it seems almost to light the landscape from within. A hillside of autumn larch in Siberia glows like something that has been gilded by hand. In summer, The Siberian taiga, the vast boreal forest that stretches across Russia from the Urals to the Pacific Ocean, is a world of extraordinary richness. The air hums with insects. The understory is dense with berry plants. Rivers run clear and cold between mossy banks, and the old larches stand above all of it, their ancient twisted trunks soft with gray lichen, their branches full of birds. Ancient larches in Siberia can reach 800 or even 1,000 years of age. Their growth slowed almost to nothing by the cold and the short seasons. A larch 1,000 years old in Siberia may be no taller than 30 meters, its trunk no wider than a meter, modest by the standards of the great trees we have visited. But in the context of that landscape, that cold, that silence, that vast white winter, a 1,000-year-old tree is a kind of miracle, and 1,000 years of silence, of slow growth, of patient cold endurance, that is its own form of wisdom. If you are finding it difficult to stay awake, that is perfectly fine. Let your eyes close. The story will carry on quietly, and you can drift with it wherever you go. In the Pacific Northwest of North America, the Douglas fir forests of Oregon and Washington contain trees that have been growing for more than 1,000 years. These are not the oldest trees in the world, but in the context of a living, working forest, with its layers of shade and moisture, its fungal networks in the soil, its cycles of growth and decay. A 1,000-year-old Douglas fir is a centerpiece, an anchor, a library. The largest of these old trees have trunks 2 to 3 meters wide, their bark deeply ridged and warm cinnamon brown, their canopies rising 60 or 70 meters above the ground. Below them, in the layered shade, younger trees, hemlock, cedar, spruce, grow in the filtered light. The forest floor is deep in fallen needles, soft and springy underfoot, its brown surface broken by the bright green of wood sorrel and the white of trillium flowers in spring. In these old forests, a remarkable thing happens underground that scientists have only begun to understand in the last few decades. The roots of the trees are connected to one another through networks of mycorrhizal fungi, thread-fine white filaments that thread through the soil and link root tip to root tip, tree to tree, across the entire forest. Through these fungal networks, trees share resources, sugar, water, nutrients, and even what some researchers have described as chemical signals, messages passed from tree to tree about drought, insect attack, disease. Old trees, sometimes called mother trees by forest ecologist Suzanne Simard, who helped discover this network, are central hubs in these underground webs. Their roots are connected to more other trees than those of younger trees, and they appear to send extra resources to seedlings of their own species growing in their shade. It is as if the old tree recognizes its own offspring and supports them in the darkness beneath the canopy. This discovery has changed the way many people think about forests. What looks like a collection of individual trees may be, in a deeper sense, a single community, communicating, sharing, supporting. The forest, understood this way, is not a collection of separate lives, but one vast, slow, interconnected life. And the old trees at its center are not just beautiful survivors. They are essential, irreplaceable nodes in a living web. Take a breath and let that settle. An entire forest talking to itself slowly in the language of chemistry and root and fungus, in the dark beneath your feet. In the mountains of Utah, the Pando Aspen Grove, that ancient, 80,000-year-old root system we mentioned at the beginning of our journey covers more than 43 hectares of ground. When seen from above, it looks like an ordinary aspen forest. Thousands of slender white-barked trees, their leaves trembling in the slightest breeze, their canopies a shifting mosaic of pale green and gold. But every single one of those trees is a shoot of the same organism, the same root, the same genetic material, the same ancient life. Pando is thought to weigh 6 million kilograms, making it one of the heaviest living organisms on Earth. Its name comes from the Latin word for I spread, which is apt. It has been spreading slowly, patiently, through the cold winters and dry summers of the Colorado Plateau, for longer than any human civilization has existed. The quaking aspen gets its name from the way its leaves move. Each leaf is attached to its stem by a long, flattened stalk rather than round, which means that the leaf sits perpendicular to the wind, and even the lightest breeze sets it trembling and turning. The whole forest shimmers and flickers in the air, the leaves showing first their bright green upper surface, then their paler underside in a continuous, gentle oscillation. It is one of the most beautiful movements in nature, an entire forest breathing. In autumn, aspen groves turn the mountains gold. The leaves shift from their summer green to a pure, warm yellow. And when the sun is low and the air is clear and cold, the hillsides of autumn aspen seem to glow from within. The light passes through the leaves and becomes golden, and the golden light fills the air beneath the canopy. And everything, the pale bark, the brown grass, the blue sky visible through the thinning canopy, is bathed in it. Among the most ancient individual trees in Asia are the ginkgo trees of China. The ginkgo is often called a living fossil. Its lineage stretches back more than 200 million years, and the modern ginkgo is essentially unchanged from its ancestors in the age of the dinosaurs. It survived whatever killed the dinosaurs. It survived the ice ages. It survived the mass extinctions and the great climate shifts of deep time. And today, in the courtyards of ancient Chinese temples and Buddhist monasteries, ginkgo trees with trunks more than a meter wide and ages over 1,000 years still stand, their fan-shaped leaves turning a clear, pure yellow each autumn. The ginkgo tree has no close relatives. It is, genetically, entirely alone among living plants. Its nearest relatives are all extinct. It is the last of its kind, a solitary survivor from a world so ancient that it makes even the oldest bristlecone pine seem young. And it stands in a monastery courtyard, its great branches reaching over the stone walls, dropping its fan-shaped leaves slowly in the autumn air, entirely unconcerned with its own antiquity. There is wisdom in that, perhaps, in simply being without drama, without concern, through all the centuries and seasons. When you walk through an ancient forest, you are walking through layers of time. The soil beneath your feet might contain the decomposed remains of trees that fell hundreds of years ago. The mosses and lichens on the living trunks may themselves be decades or centuries old. The fungi in the soil are part of networks that have been growing and connecting for longer than you can easily imagine. Every step is a step through deep time. Lichens are among the most patient and ancient feeling things in any forest. They are not a single organism, but two or three. A fungus and an alga, living in such close partnership that they function as one being. The fungus provides structure and protection. The alga provides energy through photosynthesis. Together, they can live in conditions that would kill almost anything else. On bare rock, in polar deserts, in high-altitude tundra, where almost nothing else grows. The slowest growing lichens increase in diameter by less than a millimeter per year. A lichen colony the size of a dinner plate might be several hundred years old. On the boulders and cliff faces of mountain ranges around the world, ancient lichen colonies spread in flat, overlapping plates of gray and green and orange and yellow, living timekeepers painted on rock by centuries of patient growth. In a mature old-growth forest, lichens drape the branches of the trees in long, gray-green beards and curtains, a form known as old man's beard, that gives the forest an ancient, otherworldly quality, as though the trees themselves are draped in the remnants of countless passing years. Old man's beard is sensitive to air pollution and disappears quickly from forests near cities. Where it grows thick and long, you know the air is clean, the forest is old, and the world is still, for now, as it should be. In the cloud forests of Ecuador and Costa Rica and Colombia, where the slopes of mountain ranges rise into a permanent mist, every surface of every tree is covered in a thick, dripping mat of mosses, ferns, orchids, bromeliads, and lichens. These epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without taking nutrients from them, hang from every branch, fill every fork, colonize every available surface. A single large tree in a cloud forest might host hundreds of species of other plant on its bark and branches, each one a small world, each one wet with condensed cloud water. The cloud forest is never fully light and never fully dark. The mist filters the sun to a soft, diffuse glow that fills the whole forest without casting sharp shadows. The air is cool and wet on your skin. The sound of water is constant, dripping from leaves, running down trunks, trickling in small streams hidden beneath the moss. The whole forest breathes moisture, exhales it, fills the air with it. Ancient trees in the cloud forest are draped in such thick layers of life that their original bark is invisible. You press your hand against what feels like a soft, wet cushion of moss, and somewhere underneath, 10 or 20 centimeters in, is the bark of a tree that has been growing for 1,000 years. The tree is a foundation, a host, a substrate, and the world that lives on it is a world entire. In Chile and Argentina, at the southern end of South America, grow the araucaria trees, monkey puzzle trees, as they are sometimes called in English. For the puzzle, their sharp, overlapping, scale-like leaves would pose to a climbing monkey. The araucaria is one of the oldest tree families on Earth, a lineage that goes back more than 200 million years. Individual araucaria trees in the forests of Patagonia can live for more than 1,000 years. Their massive, straight trunks rising to heights of 40 or 50 meters before spreading into a canopy shaped like an enormous green umbrella. The araucaria forests of Patagonia grow in a landscape of extraordinary beauty. Volcanic peaks covered in snow, clear blue lakes reflecting the sky, rivers running fast and cold through forests of southern beech and bamboo. In this landscape, the ancient araucaria trees stand on the ridgelines and hilltops, their silhouettes, tall and straight and crowned with their distinctive umbrellas, visible from great distances against the sky. The seeds of the araucaria, called piñones, are large, nutritious, and edible. And for the Pehuenche people of Chile, the araucaria forest has been a primary source of food for thousands of years. The piñones were harvested in autumn and roasted, eaten fresh, or ground into flour. In years of good harvest, a single araucaria tree could provide enough food for a family for weeks. The trees were never cut for timber by those who depended on them. They were too valuable alive. And so, they are still alive, on their ridgelines and hillsides, looking out over the lakes and the volcanoes, their 1,000-year-old trunks rough with the overlapping scales of their bark, their canopies slowly turning in the Patagonian wind. If you haven't already liked this video, now might be a gentle moment to do so. It means the world to this little channel and helps these quiet stories find their way to other people who might need them. In the south of France, in the Camargue, a flat, marshy delta where the Rhone River meets the Mediterranean, there are ancient tamarisk trees that have been growing for centuries in the salt flats and reed beds. Their twisted gray trunks half buried in sediment, their feathery pink branches dipping into the brackish water. The Camargue is a landscape of great horizontal peace, flat water, flat sky, the long cry of flamingos, the distant white shapes of the Camargue horses moving slowly through the shallows. And in the middle of it all, the old tamarisks, ancient and salt-worn, pink flowering every spring. The tamarisk can survive in soil so saline that they would kill almost any other plant. It absorbs salt from the soil and excretes it through its leaves. On a warm day, you can see the white salt crystals on the surfaces of the leaves, and if you touch them, you can taste it. The tree has made peace with the salt, has incorporated it, wears it on its skin, and still it flowers, still it grows, still it provides shelter for the small birds that nest in its tangled branches. In the ancient forests of the Caucasus Mountains, where Georgia and Armenia and Russia share a landscape of extraordinary biodiversity, there are oaks that are more than 1,000 years old. These are pedunculate oaks, the same species that grows across Europe. But here, they have grown in a climate mild enough and a landscape undisturbed enough that some have reached truly immense proportions. The oak has always been a tree of particular power in the human imagination. In Greek mythology, it was sacred to Zeus. In Norse mythology, to Thor. In Celtic tradition, the oak forest was the sacred grove, the place where the sky could be seen through the trees, where the boundary between the world of humans and the world of the divine was thin. The mistletoe that grows on old oaks was considered the most sacred plant in the Druidic tradition, a plant that had no roots in the earth, that lived between the tree and the sky, belonging fully to neither world. An ancient oak carries this sense of presence with it, a particular gravity, a weight of time that you feel when you stand beneath one. Old oaks often have trunks so wide and branches so long and heavy that they have been held up for centuries by the branches of neighboring trees or by wooden props placed by human hands generations ago. They lean, they spread, they sprawl. They have given up any pretense of the straight, upward growth of youth and settled into a wide, generous, utterly unhurried old age. The bark of an ancient oak is extraordinarily deep and furrowed. Like the bark of no other tree, it runs in deep vertical ridges and valleys, each one a miniature landscape. Mosses grow in the valleys, Beetles make their burrows in the ridges. Bats roost in the deep crevices where major branches meet the trunk. On warm evenings in summer, the bark of an old oak smells of something complex and slightly sweet. Resin, moss, fungus, the faint animal smell of the creatures that live there, the warm scent of wood heated by a long summer day. Let your thoughts be like that bark, layered, textured, full of small, quiet things living in the crevices. In the mountains of Central Asia, in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, there are ancient walnut forests that may be the origin of the common walnut that now grows across the world. The Arslan Bob Forest in Kyrgyzstan is one of the world's largest natural walnut forests, covering thousands of hectares of steep mountain slopes. Its trees centuries old, their nuts harvested every autumn by the people of the surrounding villages as they have been for thousands of years. Walking in this forest in September, when the air is sharp and the first frosts have touched the upper slopes, you walk on a carpet of fallen walnut shells and leaves, and the air smells of walnut, a warm, slightly bitter, intensely autumnal smell that is one of the most evocative scents in nature. The old trees have broad, spreading canopies that let through enough light for a rich understory of smaller plants. Apple trees, wild apricot, cherry plum, and hawthorn grow beneath the walnuts, and in autumn, all of them are fruiting at once. The whole forest floor covered in an abundance of small, sweet, sharp-smelling fruit. These ancient walnut forests are thought by some botanists to be among the most genetically diverse plant communities on Earth, each tree slightly different from every other, the result of thousands of years of natural seed dispersal and pollination across a vast and varied landscape. They are a genetic library of walnut diversity, carrying within their seeds the accumulated adaptation of many centuries to many microclimates, many soil types, many kinds of weather. And every autumn, when the leaves turn gold and the nuts fall, the forest gives freely, as it has always given, to the birds, the bears, the people of the valley below. Among the most moving encounters a person can have with an ancient tree is standing at the base of a giant sequoia in California's Sierra Nevada mountains. Giant sequoias are not the tallest trees in the world. That honor goes to the coastal redwoods, but they are the largest by volume. The biggest sequoia, called General Sherman, contains nearly 1,500 cubic meters of wood. It weighs approximately 2 million kilograms. It is 84 meters tall, and it has been growing in the Sequoia National Park for between 2,300 and 2,700 years. Standing beside General Sherman, you feel the ordinary scale of things dissolve. The base of the trunk is so wide, nearly 11 meters, that it fills your entire field of vision. You cannot step back far enough to see the whole tree without lying on the ground. The bark is a rich cinnamon red, deeply furrowed, soft-looking despite its obvious hardness. And the tree rises above you like a building, like a cliff face, like a red wall against the blue Sierra sky. Giant sequoias grow only in a narrow band of elevation on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada, between about 1,500 and 2,400 meters, where winter snowfall is heavy and summer temperatures are warm but not too hot. They need periodic fire to reproduce. Their cones can remain on the tree for 20 years or more, sealed shut, waiting for the heat of a fire to melt the resin that holds them closed and release the seeds. This relationship with fire is one of the most extraordinary adaptations in the plant kingdom. The sequoia does not merely tolerate fire, it needs it. Without occasional low-intensity fires clearing the undergrowth and opening the cones, sequoia seedlings cannot establish themselves, and the next generation cannot begin. The tree has built fire into its life cycle so completely that preventing fire ultimately prevents regeneration. The bark of a giant sequoia can be up to 60 centimeters thick, the thickest bark of any tree on Earth. This bark contains no flammable resin. It is essentially fireproof, a living shield that protects the living wood inside from all but the most intense blazes. Ancient sequoias carry fire scars, deep burns at their bases from centuries of fires, but they wear these scars lightly, their heartwood intact, their canopy still green, their cones still waiting for the next warmth to open. The groves where giant sequoias grow have a particular quality of light. The enormous trunks spread wide across the forest floor create a cathedral effect. Tall red columns rising to a canopy far above, with long shafts of light slanting down through the needles. The light has a reddish amber quality that seems to emanate from the trees themselves, from their warm-colored bark reflecting the sun. The forest floor is soft with millennia of fallen needles, brown and deep and springy, and the air smells of resin and cold water and height. When the wind moves through a grove of giant sequoias, the sound is extraordinary. The trees are so large and so tall that they sway slightly even in a gentle breeze, and the sound of that movement, a deep, slow creaking, more felt than heard, carries through the whole grove. You feel it in your chest as much as in your ears. The trees breathing. The Wintu people and other indigenous peoples of California have lived with these forests for thousands of years. In their traditions, the sequoias are ancient relatives, elders deserving of deep respect. Before entering a sequoia grove for any significant purpose, it was customary to speak to the trees, to acknowledge their presence, to ask for permission to be among them. This was a genuine recognition that the trees were beings with standing, with presence, with a form of awareness that deserved acknowledgement. That feeling of being in the presence of something that deserves acknowledgement is one that almost anyone who stands beneath a giant sequoia for the first time will recognize. It is not quite like any other feeling. It is quieting, humbling, and in the strangest way, reassuring. Here is something so old, so large, so thoroughly itself, that everything else shrinks to its proper size. Your worries and your busyness and your sense of urgency, they do not disappear, but they become proportionate, manageable, small, in the best possible way. You are exactly where you need to be. Everything is fine. The old trees are still growing, slowly, in the mountain light. And if this is the kind of evening you enjoy, slow and green and full of old things, there is more of it waiting in the playlist. Check it out when you wake up. There is a dragon blood tree in the Socotra archipelago, a group of islands in the Arabian Sea off the coast of Yemen, that looks unlike any other tree on Earth. Its trunk branches repeatedly into a dense, flat-topped canopy that looks, from a distance, like a vast green mushroom or an inside-out umbrella, perfectly flat at the top, its branches so densely interlaced that they form a solid platform of leaves above. Beneath this canopy, the shade is complete and cool even in the fierce heat of the island summer. The dragon blood tree gets its name from the thick red resin that bleeds from any cut in its bark, a resin that has been used for millennia as a dye, a varnish, a medicine, and a paint. The ancient Romans used it. Medieval European artists ground it into pigment. Traditional doctors across the Arabic world valued it for its healing properties. The sap is still harvested today, and the trees continue to produce it, as they have for thousands of years, in their strange and windswept island landscape. The Socotra archipelago has been isolated from the mainland of Africa and Asia for so long that it has evolved its own completely distinct flora. More than a third of its plant species grow nowhere else on Earth. It has been called the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, and walking through a forest of dragon blood trees on Socotra is like walking on another planet. The trees cluster on limestone plateaus above the sea, their flat canopies creating a surreal and peaceful grove, their roots gripping the rock with extraordinary tenacity. Dragon blood trees can live for several hundred years, and the oldest individuals on Socotra, growing slowly in thin, rocky soil with minimal rainfall, have a quality of profound endurance about them. They have survived the grinding heat of summer, the occasional fierce cyclone that crosses the Arabian Sea, the long dry seasons. They have survived, and they have continued to send up new trunks and spread their impossible flat canopies against the sky. On the other side of the Indian Ocean, in the ancient forests of Sri Lanka, grow ironwood trees called Na in Sinhalese that have been venerated for thousands of years. The ironwood tree is sacred in Buddhism. It is said that the Buddha was born, attained enlightenment, and passed away all beneath a Na tree or its relatives. In Sri Lanka, ancient Na trees grow in the courtyards of Buddhist temples, their smooth gray trunks rising to dense, round canopies, their flowers, white, four-petaled, fragrant, falling to the ground in soft showers. The flowers of the Na tree fall whole, not petal by petal, and they settle on the ground in drifts of white and cream. Walking through the courtyard of an ancient Buddhist temple in Sri Lanka on a morning when the Na tree is flowering, you walk on a carpet of flowers, and the air is full of their sweetness, a clean, clear, slightly cool sweetness quite unlike anything else. The monks sweep the fallen flowers into piles with soft brooms, and the sound of the brooms on the stones, and the smell of the flowers, and the morning light through the temple pillars, all of it together is one of the quietest, most peaceful things imaginable. In the ancient city of Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, there grows a sacred fig tree, a bow tree of the species Ficus religiosa, that is said to have been grown from a cutting of the very tree under which the Buddha attained enlightenment, brought to Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BCE. If this tradition is accurate, the Jaya Sri Mahabodhi, as it is called, is 2,290 years old, the oldest plant in the world, grown from human intention, tended by human hands. The tree is surrounded by golden railings and tended by monks and devotees who come from all over the world to sit beneath it, to touch its roots, to place offerings of flowers at its base. Its branches have been supported by golden props for centuries, the weight of their age requiring human assistance to remain lifted. Millions of people have sat beneath this tree in prayer and meditation over more than 2,000 years, beneath an ancient tree, in the quiet, in the shade, with the smell of old bark and earth and flowers in the air. That is one of the most ancient forms of human peace. It goes back further than any religion, any civilization, any written word. It is something we have always done, always known how to do. Sit beneath the old tree. Be quiet. Let the world settle. You are doing that right now, and it is exactly right. In the highlands of Ethiopia, at the headwaters of the Blue Nile, there are ancient forests of juniper and podocarpus trees that have been growing for centuries in a landscape of extraordinary beauty. Rolling hills, high moorlands, deep valleys where mist collects in the mornings and burns off slowly in the midday warmth. These forests are home to a remarkable diversity of life. Colobus monkeys move through the canopy in slow, flowing leaps. Ethiopian wolves hunt in the open moorlands above the tree line. And among the old junipers and podocarpus, dozens of species of bird fill the air with sound. The juniper trees of the Ethiopian highlands have a particular quality of light in their canopies. The small, scale-like leaves are a deep blue-green, and in certain lights, they give the whole tree a slightly blue, slightly silver appearance, as if it were dusted with very fine frost. The bark is soft and fibrous, peeling off in thin ribbons that animals use for nest lining. The berries, small, round, deep purple-blue, are eaten by birds and small mammals who spread the seeds across the landscape. The podocarpus trees of the same forests are elegant and slow-growing, their narrow dark green leaves arranged in neat, spiraling rows along their branches, their seeds falling to the forest floor in autumn, where they are eaten by everything from hornbills to baboons. The oldest podocarpus trees in these forests are several hundred years old, and their trunks are draped in the same old man's beard lichen we found in forests on the other side of the world. A reminder of how alike the deep, undisturbed places of the earth really are. These highland forests of Ethiopia are remnants, fragments of what was once a vast forest cover across the Horn of Africa, most of which has been cleared over centuries of human settlement. What remains is preserved in part by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which has maintained small forests around its ancient churches and monasteries for 1,000 years. These church forests are sometimes the only stands of old trees remaining in an otherwise deforested landscape, circular oases of canopy, each one an island of biodiversity in a sea of farmland. The church forest tradition holds that cutting trees from around a holy place is a form of desecration. And so, paradoxically, in a landscape where forests have been under enormous pressure for centuries, the trees that surround the oldest churches have been spared. An ancient church in the Ethiopian highlands often stands in a circle of ancient trees that are otherwise unknown in the surrounding landscape. The forest exists because of faith, and faith has kept it alive. In the cold forests of Finland and Estonia, there are ancient pine trees, Scots pines, that have been growing in undisturbed forest for 300 or 400 years. They grow in landscapes of glacial lakes and boulders on sandy soils where other trees struggle, their roots threading through the shallow, acidic earth, their orange-red trunks glowing in the low northern light. The oldest Scots pines in these landscapes are gnarled and weathered in ways that give them an appearance of great age, their canopies thinned and irregular, their bark deeply plated in warm orange and gray. In the Finnish tradition, ancient pine forests are places of particular stillness. The Finns have a word, metsä, that means both forest and a sense of the deep internal quiet that the forest contains. Metsä is not just a place, but a state of being, a way of experiencing the world that the forest itself teaches. To be in metsä is to be present, unhurried, fully in the moment of the trees and the light and the soft sound of the wind. On winter mornings in these northern forests, when the temperature is far below freezing and the snow is deep, the old pines stand in a blue-white silence, broken only by the occasional crack of frost-stressed wood, a sound like a rifle shot that echoes through the still forest and then fades, leaving the silence even deeper than before. The snow weighs heavily on the lower branches, bending them downward in smooth white curves. The light comes sideways through the trees, golden and long even at noon, and every pine needle catches it and glows. To be present in that cold, that light, that silence, that deep and ancient forest, is to be very far from anything complicated. There is nothing to solve, nothing to fix, nothing to worry about. There is only the light and the cold and the old trees standing in the snow. Let yourself be there for a moment. Breathe in the cold, clean air. Feel the quiet settle around you like snow. In the cloud forests of the Colombian Andes, at elevations between 2,000 and 3,000 meters, there are wax palms that grow to heights of 60 meters, the tallest palms in the world and the national tree of Colombia. These extraordinary trees grow in the Cocora Valley in a landscape of surreal beauty, misty green hillsides, deep valleys filled with cloud, streams running cold and clear between mossy banks, and their tall, slender trunks, each one perfectly straight and covered in a waxy white coating, rise above the cloud like exclamation marks against the sky. The wax palms of Cocora can live for over 100 years, growing slowly in the cold, wet, high-altitude climate. Their trunks are sometimes 5 or 6 meters in circumference at the base, tapering slightly as they rise, until at the top, where the crown of palm fronds emerges, they are no wider than a person's waist. From a distance, a hillside covered in wax palms looks like an abstract painting. Hundreds of thin white lines of varying heights against the green of the hill and the gray of the cloud. The yellow-eared parrot, one of the most endangered parrots in the world, nests almost exclusively in the cavities of old wax palms. For decades, the palm was in decline as the forests around it were cleared for cattle grazing, and the parrot was declining with it. But a recovery program led by local conservation groups has replanted thousands of palms across the valley, and both the palm and the parrot are slowly returning. The yellow-eared parrot, which was once thought to be heading toward extinction, now numbers in the thousands again, brought back, literally, by the planting of trees. There is something deeply moving about that, about humans choosing to give back what was taken, to plant the old trees again, to wait patiently for the birds to return to their ancient homes. It is one of the most genuinely hopeful things happening in the natural world right now, and it is happening in many places. In the highlands of Ethiopia, in the sequoia groves of California, in the cedar forests of Lebanon, in the ancient forests of Poland and Russia and New Zealand. People planting old trees, people choosing the long view. in the ancient olive groves of Greece and Palestine, on the islands of Crete and Lesbos, in the rocky hillsides of Jordan and Lebanon, olive trees grow that have been alive for between 1,000 and 3,000 years. These are not the managed, pruned olive trees of a modern grove. These are wild, enormous, sprawling trees whose trunks have twisted and split and merged back together over the centuries into forms of extraordinary complexity. A single tree that looks like a dozen trees intertwined, its bark silver and deeply grooved, its canopy spreading wide and low, its small silvery leaves trembling in the Mediterranean breeze. The olive tree grows slowly, but it is nearly impossible to kill. Cut it to the ground, and it will regrow from the roots. Burn it, and it will send up new shoots from the charred stump. Neglect it for decades, and it will continue to fruit, to flower, to drop its small, bitter olives on the dry, rocky ground. Ancient olive trees have survived conquests, famines, earthquakes, fires, and centuries of drought, and they are still there, still flowering each spring with small, white, almost imperceptibly scented blossoms, still fruiting each autumn. In the Gethsemane garden in Jerusalem, there are olive trees believed by some to be 2,000 years old. Trees that may have been growing in the same garden, on the same rocky hillside above the Kidron Valley, for a very long time. Whether or not this is precisely true, the trees are undeniably ancient, and standing among them in the cool of the evening, when the light is golden and the city hums below, and the air smells of dry stone and olive leaves and ancient earth, is to feel the specific quality of comfort that only great age can give. Ancient things comfort us because they have endured. They have been here through everything, and they are still here. And somehow, in the quiet presence of something that has lasted longer than anything we can quite comprehend, our own small worries begin to seem manageable. The tree has seen worse, and the tree is still standing. And so, in our own way, are we? The soft feeling you have right now, the heaviness in your limbs, the slowing of your thoughts. Is your body doing exactly what it is supposed to do? It is resting. It is settling. It is returning, like the olive tree, to its roots. Let it happen. The Amazon rainforest contains trees that have been growing for more than 1,000 years, not as isolated individuals scattered across a deforested landscape, but as part of the largest, most complex, most ancient continuous forest ecosystem on Earth. The Amazon basin covers more than 5.5 million square kilometers, and in its deepest, least disturbed sections, trees that were already old when European explorers first entered the river basin are still standing, still rooting, still sending their seeds spiraling down through the layered forest air. An ancient Amazon tree, a Brazil nut, an angelum, a cedro, rises through several distinct layers of forest. At the bottom, deep in shadow, the forest floor is covered in a thin layer of soil over ancient clay, its surface constantly churned by the roots of trees and the movements of countless animals. Here, in the permanent twilight, fungi and termites and ants do the work of decomposition, breaking down fallen leaves and branches with extraordinary efficiency. Above the forest floor, the understory layer holds young trees waiting for a gap in the canopy, palms with vast leaves that catch whatever light trickles down, giant aroids and heliconias whose leaves are as large as tablecloths. Then the middle canopy, denser, greener, filled with the movement of monkeys and birds and the constant drip and splash of water moving through the system. And above all of it, the emergent layer, the tops of the tallest trees pushing up through the main canopy into the full sun, their crowns visible from aircraft, from mountains, from the air above the forest in any direction. An ancient emergent tree in the Amazon, an angelum perhaps, which can reach heights of over 80 meters, stands in the full sun at its crown, while its roots are in the deep forest shade. From its top branches, the view in every direction is the same, an endless, rolling green ocean of forest canopy, broken only by the silver glint of rivers and the shadows of clouds moving across the treetops. The tree has been looking at this view, or something very like it, for 1,000 years. The sounds of the Amazon forest change completely through the day. At dawn, the forest fills with an extraordinary chorus, macaws calling from the highest trees, howler monkeys sending their deep, reverberant roar across the canopy, hundreds of species of bird adding their notes to a sound that is, to human ears, almost overwhelming in its richness and complexity. Then, as the sun rises and the air heats, the dawn chorus fades and the forest settles into a deeper quiet, the quiet of the midday heat, when even the most active animals find shade and rest. In the evening, a different chorus begins, the insects taking over from the birds, the tree frogs adding their voices to the chorus of cicadas and katydids, the night birds calling from their roosting places. And in the deep of the tropical night, the forest is never completely silent. There is always something moving, always something calling, always the sound of rain on leaves or water dripping from the canopy. In this ancient forest, in the darkness beneath the canopy, the world is endlessly, continuously, quietly alive. And you, in your own warm, quiet darkness, are part of the same world. The same ancient life that animates the Amazon forest animates you. The same carbon that has cycled through trees and soil and rain for billions of years is cycling through your body right now with every breath. You breathe out, and the forest breathes in. The tree breathes out, and you breathe in. You are not separate from this ancient world. You are made of it. Let that be a comfort to you as you rest. And if you wake tomorrow and want to return to this kind of quiet, the playlist is here for you. A whole library of slow, green evenings whenever you need them. Leave a comment too if the mood takes you. It means so much to know these stories are finding their way to you. Breathe slowly. Let the forest hold you. You are doing just fine. There is a moment just before sleep when the world softens at its edges. The sounds of the room become less distinct. The thoughts that were crowding your mind begin to drift apart, slowly, like leaves on slow water. The weight of your body grows heavier and more still. And in that soft, dissolving moment, you are very close to something. Some ancient, quiet state that is older than thinking, older than words. The trees are in that state always. They do not think in words, do not hurry toward goals, do not carry the weight of tomorrow on their branches. They are simply here, growing slowly, breathing steadily, rooted in the deep earth. Their leaves move in the wind without effort. Their roots drink without striving. Their rings grow millimeter by patient millimeter without concern for speed. Tonight, we have visited trees on nearly every continent. In the cold white mountains of California, the foggy coast of the Pacific Northwest, the misty highlands of Scotland, the rocky hillsides of Lebanon, the volcanic islands of the Indian Ocean, the cathedral groves of California's sequoia forests, the cloud forests of Colombia, the ancient church forests of Ethiopia, the olive groves of the Mediterranean, the vast green canopy of the Amazon. We have sat beneath trees that were alive before history began, and trees that carry the faith and traditions of entire peoples in their bark and roots and spreading branches. Each of these trees has grown in its own way, at its own pace, in its own place. The bristlecone pine in its windswept, rocky loneliness, the baobab in its dry savanna heat, the giant sequoia in its cathedral grove, the wax palm in its cloud and mist, each one perfectly suited to its world, perfectly itself, asking for nothing that it does not receive from sun and rain and the patient turning of the seasons. And each of them has endured through drought and flood, through fire and cold, through the long centuries of change that have transformed the world around them, while they went on growing slowly, adding one ring per year, breathing in and out with the seasons. There is an old tree in every great forest that the others seem to grow toward. Its canopy is the widest. Its roots are the deepest and most connected. Its presence organizes the space around it, providing shade for the smaller plants, drawing water through the deep soil, sending signals through the mycorrhizal network that binds the whole forest together. The mother tree, the center. Tonight, you have rested beneath many such trees. You have breathed their air. You have felt their ancient quiet settle over you like the best kind of darkness, the darkness of deep shade, of cool forest floor, of being held by something older and larger and more patient than anything you have to face alone. The Fortingall yew in its Scottish churchyard, with 5,000 years of rings in its twisted heart. The bristlecone pine on its cold, rocky mountainside, still adding its millimeter of new wood in the Sierra Nevada winter. The sacred fig in its Sri Lankan courtyard, tended for 2,000 years by devoted hands. The baobab in its African evening, holding 100,000 liters of water in its ancient, pale gray trunk. The giant sequoia, its bark red gold in the last light of a California afternoon, its roots bound to the roots of its neighbors in a great underground web of connection. All of them still here, all of them breathing, all of them growing very slowly in the patient darkness of the night. And you are here too, in your own warmth and quiet, as much a part of this ancient world as any of them. Your breath is the same breath. Your rest is the same rest. The carbon in your lungs and in the body of an ancient redwood, both recycled, both shared, both borrowed from a world that has been cycling and breathing and growing for longer than any of us can hold in our minds. So breathe in once more, slowly, and breathe out, and let everything go soft. The old trees are still standing, the roots are still holding, the forest is still breathing in the dark all around the world, as it has always done, as it will always do. You are safe, you are warm, you are held. Close your eyes now and rest. The night is long and quiet and full of ancient things, and all of them are peaceful. Sleep well.